Coming into Week 9 against the Cowboys, it was quite obvious that the number one goal of the defense should be taking away CeeDee Lamb. I highlighted in my preview video versus the Cowboys that Dak had a passer rating of 132 when targeting CeeDee versus 87 when targeting everyone else. Well, the Eagles didn't do a good job of that, as CeeDee had 11 receptions for 191 receiving yards, while everyone else combined for 17 catches and 183 yards. Dak had a completion percentage of 69 throwing to CeeDee, while 61% targeting everyone else. CeeDee averaged 11.9 yards per target, while everyone else averaged 6.5 yards per target. Dak's completion percentage and yards per attempt were lower than the NFL average when targeting anyone outside of CeeDee Lamb. From the beginning, Sean Desai wanted to do his best to take away CeeDee without having to dedicate extra resources to him, which would leave the defense vulnerable in other areas. Let me explain. The Eagles came into this game using quarters and their cover 6 and 8 variations on around 28% of their plays. This game they dropped that rate to 9%. Combined, they averaged using cover 2 and 3 on 43% of plays coming into Week 9, but in this game, they increased the use of those coverages to 55%. Makes sense why, as I discussed on my game preview how the Cowboys were relying much more on a quick underneath passing attack than in years past. Using cover 2 and 3 puts more defenders in underneath zones than cover 4 and cover 6 variations, as those coverages are built to take away deep passes. The Eagles primarily play cover 3 using match principles. Rules and details vary from team to team, but in general, when in cover 3 match, the defenders tasked with playing the flat, usually the slot corner and safeties, match the number 2 receiver if they run any route that is vertical or outside. Basically, anything that doesn't break off underneath and inside turns into man coverage for the flat defender. By playing cover 3 match, this allowed the Eagles to have the slot corner play the slot receiver with outside leverage while having help defenders inside from the hook defenders and middle post safety. Offenses can run plays to manipulate the rules of those hook defenders to move them out of the way, and of course defenses have adjustments to that if they see offenses trying to do that, but that was not the case for most of the game. Playing cover 3 match allowed the defense to help CeeDee in the slot without having to actually dedicate an extra guy to helping him. Notice on this play how the Eagles use a cover 3 buzz variation, which allows the slot to play with outside leverage while Reed drops into the hook zone inside of CeeDee. They've essentially bracketed CeeDee without calling a bracket. Now, the issue is the Cowboys were motioning the running back, which they did a lot of the game, in order to create confusion for the defense about which way the coverage was going to be rotating, and Cunningham and Dean don't relate to the routes properly. In cover 3 match, the corners match number 1 if they release on anything vertical, while zoning off if the receiver goes underneath right away, like if they ran a drag route. Because of the flat defender and corners rules, it often ends up playing out a lot like man coverage, which can make it hard to distinguish between cover 3 match and cover 1. But the corners would often get manned up one-on-one with the outside receivers. Here, you see CeeDee outside and Slay all over the route, but this is also an example of how Eli Ricks is protected on the inside working in the slot. The Eagles also used a good amount of cover 2, and again, this helps protect the slot corner from one-on-one matchups with CeeDee without having to dedicate specific defenders to helping. Here, CeeDee is running an option route, but because the Eagles are running cover 2, Ricks is able to take away CeeDee if he breaks his route inside, while Bradbury is sitting in the flat in case he runs outside. Dak's first option is taken away on 3rd down, but bad rush lane integrity allows him to scramble for a first, a theme we'll see come up more. Later, we see the Eagles run cover 2, but use a creeper pressure, where Nakobe Dean blitzes and Josh Sweat drops into coverage on the other side, allowing them to maintain 7 in coverage while giving a blitz look. But notice how this allows the Eagles to keep 4 defenders in the area to cover CeeDee. Dak has to hold the ball, and it ends in a sack. Overall, the Eagles' use of zone helped limit CeeDee as he had 4 receptions on 8 targets for 61 yards. His 7.6 yards per target in zone was half of his 15.7 yards per target in man coverage. We'll get to the man coverage in a second, but let's look at some of those completions in zone. The Eagles are in cover 3 here, but Ricks either forgot the play call or missed a check, but either way, he should be matching CeeDee out to the flat instead of leaving him wide open. On another play, the Eagles are in cover 2, and the Cowboys isolate CeeDee on the backside. Cunningham has his eyes in the backfield and is late getting out to help Slay, but with how wide CeeDee is and how much space is inside, with no defender to dirty the window, Slay is probably supposed to be playing this with more of a man technique. I assume this is why Slay moves from outside leverage to inside to start the play. On the Cowboys' 8th drive of the game, the Eagles ran cover 3 on every single play outside of one goal line play. On the first play of the next drive, the Eagles again run cover 3, but this time, Dallas has drawn up a cover 3 beater. They run CeeDee on a crossing route from the slot that is too deep for the inside hook defenders to help on. Sidney could have been tighter earlier in the coverage, but this is an inside breaking route designed to run away from a defender playing with outside leverage. This was a good call to take advantage of the Eagles' play. One more, this time with CeeDee lined up in the backfield. This is one of the few times the Eagles run cover 8, and in cover 8, the wool line linebacker on the backside of trips is tasked with covering the running back one-on-one. No chance for Cunningham. When you factor in all of the penalties and sacks, the Eagles' zone coverage wasn't the main culprit of their issues, as they allowed 6.4 yards per play and a 62% completion percentage versus 9.1 yards per play and 73% completion percentage in man. So let's take a look at their man coverage issues. The Eagles used man coverage on 17 of Dak's dropbacks. CeeDee was targeted on 7 of those. He had 6 receptions for 110 yards. The Eagles' man coverage strategy early on was similar to their zone coverage strategy in that they didn't want to dedicate specific players to doubling CeeDee if they didn't have to. They used play calls that would provide help, though they didn't get into straight up double teams until the end of the game, which is similar to what we've seen for most of the Eagles games when they do decide to double someone. In week 8, the Eagles blitzed when using man coverage on 41% of their plays, which removed a help defender, and in my review of last week's game, I highlighted how their high blitz rate in man coverage hurt them against the Commanders' quick passing attack. The Eagles were significantly better in man coverage when they stopped blitzing, and they carried that strategy over to this week, but execution wasn't there. On this play, the Eagles are playing cover 1 with Eli Ricks on CeeDee Lamb. It's not often you see a slant and go from the slot, but the Cowboys ran it here, and with the way CeeDee bends this route, you know they put this plan specifically to take advantage of what the Eagles like to do on 3rd and short. Ricks takes outside leverage, but he's very wide, and then when CeeDee approaches, he opens his hips up, giving CeeDee a free release inside. He needs to keep his hips square and shuffle laterally instead of giving up so much space. Then, when CeeDee cuts, Rick's eyes go to the quarterback. With this much separation, he has to have his eyes on his man and hustling to get attached again, but he has his eyes on the quarterback, and when CeeDee cuts upfield, he's late to react. If he gets attached, he can then look back for the ball and feel CeeDee as he cuts back upfield. Ricks does have help low and inside from a hole player, though the Cowboys know the Eagles like to use cover 1 hole on 3rd and short and use the tight end to occupy that player. Ricks also has help deep and inside from the post safety, and Reed is locked in and ready to attack on a throw inside as well. But Rick's technique early in the rep causes him to lose his leverage late, negating the benefit of those help defenders. On 3rd and 14, the Eagles use man coverage again, but this time we're playing cover 2 behind it. This allows the defensive backs to play aggressive, taking away throws underneath, knowing they have deep safety help over top. Again, Ricks doesn't have help designed specifically to go to him, but he does have help that he should be leveraging CeeDee to. He should be playing trail technique, where he is slightly behind the receiver so he can play underneath any intermediate breaking routes, while the safety helps him layer over top of any deep throws. Notice how Slay and Bradbury are both intentionally staying underneath the receivers, but Ricks looks like he's trying not to get beat deep despite having deep help, and CeeDee breaks his route off underneath him. The defensive line loses contain, and with Ricks not able to stay attached with CeeDee at the top of the route, it makes it even harder for him to keep up on a scramble drill. On a different 3rd and short, the Eagles again use cover 1 hole, but this time the hole player is explicit in trying to help take away CeeDee. This takes away Dak's first read, but he's able to again scramble and find Ferguson late. I thought Byard had good coverage on this until the scramble drill. He did get called for defensive holding, but it looks like a ticky-tack foul, though the TV only gave us one replay angle. The refs were quick to throw flags in the secondary, and I thought that included plays that benefited the Eagles. In man coverage, Ricks wasn't the only person CeeDee got matched up with. Again, the Eagles continue to end up with safeties on receivers when they line up as the number 3 receiver in trips formations and man coverage. Here, Reed gets matched up on CeeDee in a bunch formation. It's cover 1 hole, so he has help underneath and deep inside, even though it doesn't look like that because of the Eagles' pre-snap disguise. He gives up his outside leverage, but does a good job using a hook to sling himself back into trail position, forcing Dak to make a tough throw. He's very crafty using his hands in these scenarios. He's not tugging, and he doesn't continue to hold on. He's subtle enough to put himself back into position and then gets his hands off and takes a good angle to undercut the route. Later, they leave Slay on the backside, covering the tight end, so Byard gets matched up on CeeDee. CeeDee essentially runs a double move, and Byard is caught with his eyes in the backfield after the initial break. To make things more difficult, the Eagles don't have any underneath help for Byard as they send a blitz. CeeDee only got matched up on safeties twice in man coverage, and I understand wanting to disguise looks and not give away coverages by moving guys around, but there's certain matchups where getting your best guys on their best guys is necessary. On this play late in the game, Slay and Bradbury were out, so they were forced into putting Ricks, Job, and Sidney in, and the Cowboys run a rub route against the Eagles in cover 2 man. Sidney tries to go over top of the rub, but if the Eagles aren't going to switch off on the rub, then Sidney needs to go underneath the rub, knowing he has deep safety help over top. Slay was targeted twice in man coverage against CeeDee, and he gave up 2 catches for 27 yards, so he wasn't perfect either, though his coverage was much tighter than any of the other guys the Eagles threw at Lamb. The Eagles only double-teamed CeeDee in man coverage twice in the game. The first time was 4th and 8, and Dak was forced to move to another option, where Bradbury made a nice play. The second time resulted in a game-changing sack. I had a few issues with some of Desai's decision making, but the main one was that the Eagles didn't double CeeDee more often in man coverage. I understand you're not going to double team a guy every time because it will be too easy for the offensive coordinator to use different formations, alignments, and route concepts to take advantage of the other defenders that no longer have a help defender, but they needed to double him more. I know a lot of people wanted Slay to shadow CeeDee, but there's a discussion we need to have about that. For one, Slay started moving to CeeDee's side of the field late in the first quarter. He didn't follow him into the slot until late in the game, but he was on his side of the field, which allowed Slay to get matched up with him when CeeDee did a line outside. Furthermore, pure shadow corners in the NFL don't really exist anymore. Teams rarely have one defender follow a specific receiver around the field, and to be honest, while Slay is the team's best coverage defender, he's not the same top-end man defender he used to be. At this point in their careers, CeeDee is going to get the better of Slay. I would have much rather seen the old Belichick strategy of dealing with top receiving threats. Have your top corner cover secondary receivers while doubling the best receiver with other defenders. Second, Desai has to get better with his personnel usage. There were several instances where the Cowboys went into 4 wide receiver sets, even a few at the end of the game where the Cowboys had 4 receivers, a tight end, and no running back, and he still stayed in nickel personnel. This left Cunningham against a receiver, and that's a losing strategy. In addition to that, we're seeing too many miscommunications in coverage, and while I have been understanding, due to having a constant rotation in the secondary, having to deal with the rookie learning curve, and being forced to play certain guys out of position, many of these miscommunications are happening among linebackers and secondary players that have been playing most of the season. At some point, these guys need to get on the same page. We're also seeing their issues with pass rush integrity continue to show up against more mobile quarterbacks, and that is going to bite them in the ass if it doesn't get fixed. I think anyone watching the channel for some time knows that I'm not one to jump to conclusions over a small sample size, but if the Eagles come out of the bye week and are continuing to have those issues, then you can color me concerned.